Hello there and welcome to Tom's Warhammer Minis. Today we're back venturing deep into the Necron Tomb world with the brand new Canoptek Circle Killteam. Led by the cryptic geommancer, these Necron constructs have had their protocols rewritten and enhanced for extreme violence to repel anything foolish enough that dares enter their domain. In this guide, I'll be taking you through an alternative colour scheme rather than the Sortek law-written narrative that GW have gone with. Here, I'll be showcasing the Szareckhan Dynasty to match alongside my Tomb World scenery, and the tutorial of which is available right now on my channel. Necron Blades, though, are a true painting challenge. There are many fantastic guides out there from so many different artists, creating some really spectacular looking blades. But you'll all agree, no matter how good that guide is, they are tricky to personally get looking right, and highlighting them can be an even bigger pain. They can just either end up really chunky and just looking really wrong. Let's face it, we've all been there. In this guide, I'm going to take you through a never been used colour scheme that results in zero highlighting requirements, that creates a box art similar blade, and it's really very easy to do. It will be an absolute game changer when it comes to painting Necron blades in the future, and it's exclusive to this channel. It's time though to get started with our Necrons, so without further ado, grab your paints and grab your brushes and let's get hobbying. Okay, starting our Canoptek Circle Killteam. Now, all my models have been primed in White Scar, and if you're thinking, what on earth is he doing when it's going to be mostly metallics? Rather simply, it allows me to do the contrast painting. Contrast paints only really work on bright colours. Yes, they can work on metallics, but you're not going to get the effect that I want to achieve here. Now also, if I paint it metallic section by section, while it's primed in this coat, it allows me to see every detail so I'm not missing things and I'm getting it as accurate as possible, because I am going to be painting the Szareckhan Dynasty, and Games Workshop have not actually painted theirs in that colour scheme. So I want to try and create it as accurate as possible, considering there is no law accurate version with these models that we've seen that's official. So to do this, I am recommending, this is what I'm doing, I'm using other models from the website that are painted in the Szareckhan Dynasty, and I'm getting ideas of different similar pieces that I can say, right, that should be that colour, this should be that colour, and it's going to be as accurate as possible to what the Szareckhan Dynasty would look like if it were painted that way. Now with that out of the way, we're starting our first paint, and I'm taking Tessaract Glow. Now normally I apply this either midway through or at the end, but really I want to get the contrast painting out of the way so I know where each section is, just so I get it as accurate as possible. So any bright orbs, eyes, little gems, this kind of stuff that you want to put in that glow, that's where I've applied it. So just to show the others, you've got these walkers here, so like the big areas, you've got the orbs, nice and simple. I'll show the other one. Exactly the same, you've got these Gauss blaster guns, so I've done the little bits there to make them glow. And then you've got these. Now personally I can't tell which one's a warrior, which one's the animator, but you get the idea. It's the eyes, it's the orbs, it's the glowing bits in the centre. 3 more to show. Now while I've had this paint to hand, I've also done the tiny little eyes on the scarabs. There are a few dotted around, so just take your time, pick out the eyes in those colour as well. And the last one to show, you've got this little one here. So take your time, get that done, and then we'll move on to the next stage. Next up, and this applies only to the geomancer character model that you can see here, I'm taking Warp Lightning. Now when you look at the stone rock that he's got here, quite often, especially in the other models, you will see it's more of a Terradon Turquoise or a Keelian green kind of style. Now I've opted for Warp Lightning. My reasoning here is it's part of the Tomb World. If you've seen my Tomb World scenery tutorial, you know exactly how I'm going to go about painting this kind of rock. It just makes sense for me to match it. You know, if we're going law accurate, I want it to be similar. So I've painted it in Warp Lightning. The only area you need to be careful is when you get around to the orb. Where you get to the feet, you can go to town on it. It doesn't matter if you capture them. We're going to be base coating them in metallic details later. So both sides on that one. With the Warp Lightning, I've also very carefully painted the glyph area. Obviously I did it in Tessaract Glow to begin with the actual symbol, but very carefully with a small airbrush I've just gone around the outside edge of that glyph, and I've painted the entire glyph on that side and that side of his staff. And next up, just to confuse absolutely the entire world, I won't be painting the actual blade of the staff in the traditional way you think. It's going to look it, hopefully, but it's not going to start that way. Contrast paints work really well if you have an underlayer colour, and we can use other paints later on to manipulate the colour to get really cool effects. So to begin with, we're going completely off track. We're going to base coat it with Bad Moon Yellow. This is both sides. Don't forget you've got the inside of the blade and just the bits around that. Don't worry about the central part. When you look at other models with similar bits, they are painted in metallic details. So yep, Bad Moon's yellow all over that, and let it dry fully before we move on to the next stage. Now, as is the way, you always end up missing a bit when creating these tutorials. You've got this little section here. I only spotted it last second after doing the Bad Moon's yellow. I've also base coated it in Warp Lightning, exactly like we've done the bigger one. But moving on from that, my next colour is Tessaract Glow. Now, the main focus here was on this model, but I have placed little bits on the other cards, and I'll explain that in a minute. So for here, I've done it on the chin, but I've done it twice. So to explain it better, I've base coated it, and when it's completely dry, I've added in a second layer, but only into that recess. It gives us that natural highlight that's already fixed in place. It means essentially that section is completely done. So it's two coats, but just one sort of overall coat, and the other one just to create that recess shade. I've base coated it over the entirety of the main frame of the staff, as you can see. And then we've got all these little scabs, and I've done that across all the models. Now the ones to point out are the tomb crawlers, because they've got hidden scabs. So you'll see most of the scabs are either on the rocks or on the base crawling up. But if you turn him upside down, which is a bit hard to see on this camera, you can see you've got one here. And then you've got one exactly the same on that side. A bit hard to show on the camera. Turn it around, you just about see it there. Now, it's best to paint these now, which is why I'm doing it now. You'll see that the paint, you end up catching it on the sides of the inside of this piece of metallic. I am going to be base coating them in metals rather than green. So that's why it's important for me to get them done now, because we don't want to spoil the metallic details later. But those are the only hidden ones. The other tomb crawler is exactly the same. He's got two scabs in the exact same places as this one. Next up, and you're going to start to understand why I did the Bad Moon's yellow now, we're going to create this bright vivid green. Now it looks a bit glossy, it's not, it's still drying from where I've just applied it, but the colour I'm using here is Hex Ray Flame. This is a very translucent green. It's classed as a contrast paint. It technically is, it is one of their early sort of experimental ones, but it's very bright and it's very vivid. Now we want a small amount on the brush. We don't want it to put excessively where it starts to heavily pull, but we just want enough where you're really starting to pull into the actual natural curves of this Necron weapon. You've got some normal recesses regardless, so you're going to get this darker effect anyway, but we really want to catch this edge, because what's going to happen is, if you can picture the colour Tessaract Glow, imagine that as an edge highlight. That's what we're already automatically achieving, and we're going to use that to advantage later on, which hopefully will mean zero highlights for this weapon. I'm going to be applying different greens later, but just an even layer of Hex Ray Flame. Keep an eye that it does pull in an area that you want it to pull in, but not pulling excessively. Next up, I'm taking Black Templar, and I'm using this mostly for the Geomancer, but I've also applied it to a couple of areas on the Tombstalkers. So to begin with, let's start at the top of the staff. You've got this section around the glyph, and I've painted it in its purest form entirely around there, as you can see, letting it really settle into those recesses and just leaving a lighter area on the outside. Next, there are certain cables that I'm using this on, and this is all the textured cables. So any blank cables that are completely flat and smooth, I'm not painting. This is all the ones with the tiny little recesses, and Black Templar is much better than Black Legion for this, because we're allowing the black to sit darkly in the recesses and having that natural highlight on the outside. So that's why I'm using it there. Now you also find those cables on the Tombstalkers, and it's only these models that you'll find it on. So you see you've got two on this one, and there's two on the other one. The actual Canoptek main things, they don't have any of these type of cables. They've only got these smooth ones, which we'll be doing in a different colour. Now next up, I'm using Black Templar to be very neat and very specific here, and I'm doing this on the actual staff. So we painted it in Terradon Turquoise, and I want Terradon Turquoise to be the actual highlighting colour. Now, if you're like me and you've ever actually highlighted one of these things, in its neatest form of edge highlighting, you know they are a huge pain in the backside. But we can use contrast paints to our advantage here by applying Black Templar into the actual recess of each of these cylindrical pieces. We can just leave the natural highlight that's in place already from our initial base coat. It takes time, but the beauty of this model, the way it's designed, it's kind of curved inwards anyway on each one, where we can just apply a bit of Black Templar and just gently take it section by section. We haven't got to worry about drying lines either. So the way I've done my one, I've started to imagine facing this. This is me facing the model. I've applied Black Templar, Black Templar, Black Templar, Black Templar, going all the way up, all the way down, whichever way you want to go. Now, I'm not worrying about a drying line because then I can go around the other side, do it there, and then you're just meeting up halfway in between until you've got this neat overall colour and absolutely perfect highlighting where we haven't got to do a single thing. Saves a lot of time, saves a lot of stress. It's a clever little trick if you know how. If you do accidentally catch the edge, just quickly wash your brush with a damp brush, not completely wet. You could just wipe off the paint and it'll be fixed back to its normal place. So take your time and get those details done. And next up, I'm taking Terradon Green. I'm applying this over select areas. So to begin with, for the actual main blade of the weapon, using a small airbrush, what I've done is I've applied a thin, even coating over the whole area, but not the edges. So we're getting that nice natural highlight created by the Hexray flame and the Bad Moon's yellow. It's going to save a lot of time later. So be really precise, clean your brush, wipe it off if you make a mistake, but just do your best just to keep the edge highlights in place. Just saves a lot of time, and you can really see how it's starting to turn into that natural Necron looking weapon. Now I've also applied it over all the other cables, the ones that aren't textured with the flat surfaces. So you can see on the geommancer you just got under the belly there. And just to show the other models, there's other certain areas that I've applied the Terradon green in. So like you can see the cables here. Ignore that green, that's different. We'll come to that one in a second. But for instance here, you've got these energy weapons. I've applied it around there and into the recesses, but leaving the Tessaract Glow in place. But like you see, you've got the cables there. Just to show some of the actual other Canoptek models, exactly the same as before. And then you've got these coils which have applied it in there. But for the most part, you've just got these cables. On this one, he's got a flat area for his weapon, but I've applied it in there. And again, you've got the cables. And then the last two models just to showcase. You kind of get the idea. Now going back to this Tombstalker, I said we've got a different green here. This is just to break it up, and it's only on this Tombstalker weapon if you've built it this way. And the colour I've used here is Striking Scorpion Green. It's just literally just have a bit of difference in colour variation. So you've got a bit on that side, turn it round, exactly the same on the other side. Nice and simple. Next up, I'm taking Dark Angel's Green. Now if you've seen my Necron Walls tutorial, you know exactly what I'm doing here, in the same principle that we've done in this section here of the staff. So over the Warp Lightning details, I've applied Dark Angel's Green, but avoiding all of the edge highlights, so that green glow is exactly in place. Same on the little one. For the glyphs, I've very carefully painted it around. Now this one doesn't particularly matter, we can always edge highlight that one. Because I've got that one in Tessaract Glow, you want to be very neat here. But once again, leaving that edge highlight on both examples in place. Now the Necron Blade is a little bit more interesting. Now I've used the box art as reference material here. Personally, I'm rather rubbish at these, in the sense of working out where they should just go. But the box art is very good reference material. And on the other side, we're literally mirroring it. So what I've done on this side is the same on this side. And the stock image on the website shows you this side. So for the best way to explain it, with Dark Angel's Green, with a small amount on the tip of your brush, and I'm using a small airbrush here, I'm avoiding all the edge highlights because I want that in place for the end. But I'm taking it, for example, in this corner, bringing it down, wash the brush, quickly dry the brush so it's damp, and feather out the colour. It's nice and simple. You've got that blend, it's done. For areas like this where you've got it in the middle, I've started, for example, here with that small amount of paint in the brush, applied a small section, quickly dry the brush, feather it out upwards, relay a bit of paint onto the brush, bring it down, wash the brush, feather out this end. You haven't got to worry about a drying line because Dark Angel Green is quite a dark paint, and with those underlayer paints in progress, you're not going to notice a drying line. But you will notice drying lines if you leave the feathering too long to do so. It does require speed. Just get a good feel for it, take your time, do as little or as much as you need to do to make your blade. In reality, if you're just happy without the Dark Angel's Green, the blade still looks good enough without it. But I've gone ahead and done it, as I say, both sides mirroring. The other point to note, this section here that's still in that bright green, that doesn't get painted. It's going to be part of the metallic detailing that goes up to this section here. It was easy just to layer it at the very beginning. Now, taking Dark Angel's Green, I have applied it on the other models. So for the Canoptek Wraith kind of things, you've got round here. I'm only showing you on this one because it's exactly the same in all of them. Can't really explain what this centre is, but where the energy is around the orb. I've done the same on the Tomb Stalkers. Theirs is a little bit bigger. Now, I haven't painted these white sections. I'm going to paint them in metallics. It doesn't matter if we catch the details around it. I have been a little bit messy. Obviously, you don't want to catch it on the Tessaract Glow. But the other bits are going to be metallic details, so they're going to get relayered anyway. And that's all of our Dark Angel's Green done. Next up, and this is for the Geomancer only, I'm taking Apothecary White, and this is for the top half of his head. Now, if I can get it into view, you've got the Tessaract Glow eye, and there's a little bit just above the eye, which I haven't painted in Tessaract Glow. So I put the Apothecary White over that, but I've painted a very thin, even there, over the entire head. However, where I have gone a bit more heavily is, you might just be able to see it, the little shadow there, is he's got the sides almost like his cheeks, where you have got a big natural recess. So I've applied more heavily there just to get a bit of a shadow effect, but over the entirety of the face, it's just a small, even, thin coat there. Not thin down alarming medium, it's just pure Apothecary White, but not too heavy where it pulls, apart from the cheeks. Next up, we're painting the silver details, and it's quite important we do this now. It does apply to certain areas of the other models, but we're really focusing here on the Geomancer for the reasons why. Now, the internal workings of the Necrons are mostly silver, and they're pretty tricky to get to, especially in a model like this, where you've got all these complicated details all dotted around. So painting the silver now means we can afford to be a little bit messy. We don't want to catch any of the painted details we've done, but all the white details that you see will be painted up in the future stage in Brass Scorpion. So by catching them now, because we're going to be painting them in metallics later, we can afford to be messy. So the colour I'm using here is Iron Warriors, and this is going to be for a reason you're going to find out in the next stage. It's dark, it's a good layering base coat, just apply it all over. I'm going to do a little few 360s of all the different models so you just get an idea of where I've applied them. But essentially it's all the internal workings of this model. I'll show you the others. So I'll show the Tomb Stalkers. Essentially they are both the same, despite the different weapons. You see I've done the joints of the little legs there, but not the actual main feet. I want to do them in Brass Scorpion. I'll show off the Canoptek guys. Important to note, in these ones you have got these little bits of metal strutting out of the rocks, so have a look for them. They're mostly designed to help the model stand on the base because they are thin and flimsy. So you'll find most attached to a leg, but there are the odd ones like that. I'll show these two. So you can see. And my last one. Done like that. Now the same reason that they're hard and tricky to get to, these details, I've shaded them once they were dry. The shade paint I'm using here is Known Oil. Nice and simple, straight over the silver. Next, we're finishing off all of our silver details by highlighting them, and I really recommend a dry brush here. There's a lot to do if you did it by hand, which is absolutely viable by choice, but at the same time we can take advantage of the state of the model as it is now and give it a cheeky dry brush. And if you do, I recommend a small size dry brush to do this. So the colour I'm using here is Necron Compound. And nice and simply with a small dry brush, straightforward, dry brushing all over. Once again, just be careful as you reach the details that you painted in contrast paints, but when you get to the white areas, you're free to be a bit messy. I've done this across all of our models, and now our silver is completely done. Next up, we're finishing off all of the base coats across all of our models, and there's only 2 to do here. You've got one which is the primary focus of the model, and then you've got the basing. So for the model, it's all of our remaining white details, and the colour I'm using here is Brass Scorpion. Now, Brass Scorpion is classed as a layer paint. In my opinion, that is completely wrong. It is a base paint, in my opinion. It is very thick. What I tend to do when I buy a new one, and that one I've just shown you is relatively new, is I open it up, I do pour a small amount of Lamy Medium and give it a really good shake. It is thick, and painting it in large areas like this, it tends to clog, especially when you've got all this recessed detailing. We don't want to do that and spoil these models. That's down to you whether you want to do that. It's something I would advise. Now, when it comes to base coating this, I am recommending 2 thin coats in certain areas. You've got these large areas here. When you apply the first base coat, it's going to look a bit blotchy. In some areas it looks okay, in others it's a bit streaky. A second thin coat will just really make it solid, like a proper base coat. Areas like this on the hand, I find you only need 1 base coat. Now, painting this on is going to be quite fiddly, especially when you get to the Tombstalkers. There is a lot to do. It's time consuming, and it's a bit of a pain, especially when you get into underneath them. So just take your time. Just take it section by section. I find models, the big ones, these, do one, put it down, do that one, put it down, add a second layer in the certain areas you need to on that one, and the same again on that one. For the other characters, they're a lot simpler to do. There's still quite a bit to paint on, but they're just easy to get the brush in and out of these details. Obviously not forgetting the undersides or the insides of these top bits. So just to show the other 4, just to give you an idea of what they all look like. All done and base coated. And our last 2, like so. Now, keeping this one to hand, we're moving on to our other colour that I talked about, our base coating one. And the colour I'm using here is Mechanica Standard Grey. So this is for all the rocks and basing material you see across the models. Now, we could contrast paint it. I am a contrast painter, so you're probably thinking, why on earth are you not doing that? Rather simply, if you've seen my Toonworld Scenery tutorial, I primed all the details in Mechanica Standard Grey. Now, I want to kind of keep that consistency, because I'll be doing Skeleton Horde in the next stage. So just base coating them in 1 layer, all even, with Mechanica Standard Grey. It just makes it consistent with the other work I've done. You could absolutely, if you want to skip that and make it even quicker, do Basilicata Grey. I would recommend adding a bit of Lamy Medium to that mix if you're doing Basilicata Grey or Rattling Grime, just to help with the flow. Otherwise you will get drying lines, and it can be quite dark and intense in certain areas. But those are the colours I've used: Brass Scorpion and Mechanica Standard Grey. Next up, across all the models, I'm shading all of that Brass Scorpion detailing. The colour I'm using here is Targor Raid Shade. Now, I'm not doing a recess shade, I'm literally applying it over every single part of the metallic detail to give this darkened effect. It's going to look a bit matte, but we're going to buff it up with some dry brushing in the next stage. But as I said, that's across all of the Brass Scorpion, across every model. At the same time, while that's drying, I'm taking Skeleton Horde and I'm applying this over all the Mechanica Standard Grey detailing we did for the base material. So all that rubble and ruin, I've applied it there, once again on every single model. Now, there is going to be a bit of a drying time, so we can absolutely take advantage of some highlighting, because our models are now officially battle ready. But we want to take them to the next stage. So the first colour I'm using here is Moot Green. Now, across all the models where I did those green cables in the Candras green, I've just done an edge highlight across them all. It's very subtle, you're not really going to notice it. And in most cases for me, it's a bit more of a relayer. I've caught it a couple of times with some of the Brass Scorpion details. So it's just a relayer, but also a subtle highlight. At the same time, for the geomancer, and this is the geomancer I've done it on only, I've created a 1-to-1 mix with Lamy Medium and Moot Green, and as you can see, I've just dropped it into the recesses of its chest cavity just to create a slight Necron green glow. Now, focusing solely on the geomancer, it's got a couple of highlights to do here. For the white of the head, which we did in Apothecary White, I'm just doing an edge highlight of White Scar. Very subtle, you can just about see it on the camera. It's just to pick out those details a bit more. Now, the geomancer has a bit of a unique eye, which is just about seeable here. you've got the green eye that I've painted, and then just above there is a second very small eye. Now the Every Metal team have done a little dot in the eye, and I've done the exact same, almost like a pupil. The colour I've used here is Abaddon Black, just a smallest dot, just to really pick it out. Just put a tiny amount on the tip of your brush and just dot it on. It's as simple as that. Once that's done, just wait for all those metallic details to dry, wait for the base details to dry, and then we can move on to some dry brushing. Next up, we're going to finish off the remaining details and our models with some cheeky dry brushing highlights. Now the reason I'm doing dry brushing here, there's a lot of sharp edges that are easy to catch rather than going down the classic highlight route. It would take a lot of time, and while it's absolutely plausible, you do you, it's just quicker and simpler to dry brush. Now the first colour I'm using here is Canoptek Alloy, and I really recommend using a small dry brush size here. There's a lot of details, for example, in between here. A bigger dry brush size is not going to get in, and we don't want to catch all the work we've done. Small dry brushes give us more precision. So the Canoptek Alloy I've done across all of the models, and this is the dry brush, the Brass Scorpion. Moving on from that, I'm then taking Administratum Grey. Once again, I'm using a small dry brush, and I've applied this very gently over all the basing materials. So these are all the rocks that you see attached to the base. Just gives it a nice subtle edge highlight. And then finally, in the classic painting method, we're not dry brushing this on, we're using a small paintbrush. I'm taking some Ard Coat Gloss Varnish, and I've applied this over all the Tessaract Glow orbs. So I have done it on the eye here, but it's all the other little orbs that you see, and I've also applied it to the blade of this staff, just to give it that extra shiny glow. And once that's done, our models are fully complete. All we need to do next is the basing. Next up, we're focusing on the basing, and this is going to be a real trust the process kind of aspect. Now, a lot of Necron bases you'll see online, and I've seen them already, you'll see this kind of style of green or a different green, and you'll see Modern Earth just slapped on top. And we're not going to do that here. You can absolutely do the texture basing to whatever you want to do, but I want to try and do something a little bit different, a little bit unique. So the colour I'm using here is Tessaract Glow, and I've painted it straight over the base. Now there might be little sections that you've caught already, maybe a bit of silver, a bit of bronze, maybe a different colour, and that's okay. We're just going to leave it in place because it's all part of texturing the base. You can see I've got a couple of little dots here. Think of it as dirt, because when I'm going to be layering it up in the next couple of stages, it's all going to change regardless. So it's something different. You see the bases that the Heavy Metal team did. We're not going to copy exactly what they've done. This is going to be my own take on it, of a different type of glowing energy that's coming from beneath, as if they're inside their own tomb world. We're continuing with our basing, and let's talk a bit more about the Tessaract Glow and what that whole point was in the previous step. Imagine the Tessaract Glow as energy lines bleeding through the ground. You've got to imagine our Necrons are in their tomb world, energy is coursing through the whole terrain, it's going to be glowing beneath them. So to get that glow effect, we want them to have energy lines like this, and the colour I'm using next is Warp Lightning. I'm creating rough random sections to create these lines that are just going through. Obviously create them as thin or as thick as you like, and as many or as few as you want. Now essentially what I'm going to be doing in the next stage is adding Dark Angel's Green to create that Caliban green colour effect. We'll have the energy line of the Tessaract Glow bleeding through. We'll have the Warp Lightning as the edge highlight to that. And then between the rest of it will be the Dark Angel's Green. So just to show you a couple of examples. Here's the Tomb Stalker, what we've got so far. And say it's as random, as patterned, but as illogical as possible to make it, just different. Here's the Canoptek one, just like that. So let that completely dry, and then we'll move on to the Dark Angel's Green. And finally, finishing off that base, I have taken Dark Angel's Green, like I said. I've applied this all over in those sections, leaving that fine line of Warp Lightning and the Tessaract Glow as the energy bleeding through. Just to show you the other examples of what this looks like across some other models, there's the Tomb Stalker and one of the Canopteks. There we go. Now from here on you could add a few more things. You could add some tufts, you could have some skulls, you could even take a bit of texture paint, and if you want to like add extra rubble, I'd recommend something like astrogranite. For me, I'm happy just to leave them where they are for the time being, just to showcase them all finished together, because at this stage our models are complete. And there we have it. Our Szareckhan Dynasty Canoptek Circle Killteam is complete. And I really love the style of these models. We're so used to seeing soldiers in the Killteam sets that this is just a true breath of fresh air, and they look absolutely brilliant. This colour scheme also gives a unique take on the models and ties in perfectly with the scenery I've already done, the tutorial of which you can see right now on my channel. Speaking of which, if this guide has provided inspiration and guidance, then do please give it a like. Share to help the Warhammer community in creating awesome models like this, and do subscribe to see all the latest tutorials as they come. Supporting me does something truly wonderful. It means I get to support you, the awesome Warhammer community, with more content like this. So thank you for watching, and until the next video, do look after yourselves, and happy hobbying.